Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma231 here, back in data about Kagurabachi, chapter number 81. This chapter is titled Core. And before we hop into this one today, just want to quickly say this is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter video. I know this is like an absolutely amazing chapter of Kagurabachi, but I mean, let me just tell a quick story, and then I'll say why this video may be a little shorter, even though I am sitting down and telling a story. Either way, whatever. I was sitting down for breakfast this morning, of course. Today is, what is today's date? Today is June 1st of 2025, which was the date this Kagurabachi chapter came out. And, of course, I am on the East Coast of the United States, so weekly Shonen Jump chapters normally come out for me at 11 o'clock this time of year, right? Of course, whenever we go back over to standard time and we're not in daylight savings time, it's an hour earlier at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but currently it is 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And today I just happened to be eating a really late breakfast. I also sort of woke up a little bit later, had some things going on. I stayed up a little bit too late last night, all things considered, right? So I pretty much wake up this morning, mulling around for a while, and I'm like, all right, I need to go eat breakfast. And being I'm back home from college, I was hanging out with my family, and me and my dad were sitting down at the breakfast table, right? And we were sitting down, and I'm like, oh, look at that, it's 11 o'clock, I've got something that I need to do, pretty much, right? So I go over to Weekly Shonen Jump, and I open up Kagurabachi, I'm just sitting there, and I'm flipping through, and I'm like, okay, oh, that's pretty interesting. Oh, wow, that whole joke I made, like, last chapter about, like, hey, we will, if we're getting a Kabanagi headquarter, or not a Kabanagi headquarter, but a Kabanagi leader's name every chapter, we're gonna have so many more, expecting that to be a joke. Lo and behold, we end up getting one this chapter, of course, in Master Izaru, who of course I'll be talking about here later in a second. Well, flipping through this chapter, I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. Oh, we have all this stuff with Kudo coming back. Oh no, Kudo may be actually dead. Like, oh, what's all this stuff? And the really cool moment where we meet this guy who, we see his name, his name is Kashima, and pretty much like he is Kudo's right-hand man, pretty much. It's, oh, that's really cool. Oh, wow, cool, or stuff. Oh, who is this random sorcerer lady? Oh, it's transformation stuff, and they're trying to kill Hakuri, but, oh no, this guy Kazushima ends up, like, helping and save the day, and all of this stuff, and, like, okay, oh, all of this is bad, okay, Hakuri has to run away, and then I flip the page, and I'm like, wait a second. I think I know that silhouette in that small panel, because of course, like, I am so used to reading manga and just following the line, like, where I don't see what's on the page until I get there, and then I'm like, wait a second. That's Uruha, and no lie, I am sitting there, a little bit of a weird breakfast, but I was having some squash from last night, and zucchini and patty pan squash, all mixed up there. Of course, stuff that we grow on our farm, so it's stuff that I eat a lot of during the summer whenever it's getting, when it's coming off, pretty much, and I'm sitting there and I'm eating it, and I legitimately dropped my fork onto my plate as I'm like, wait, Uruha? And then we pretty much see the whole thing where he's like, hey, Centipede! And of course, there was that brief second, I'm like, Centipede? Why does he have the manga seeming like, oh, wait a second, that whole thing on the train of, like, Kiora and Chihiro, and, like, Hakuri knows that it's the right one and pulls his top knot down, and I'm like, whoa, that's a really cool moment. And then, of course, the whole thing of, like, whoa, he's using the DIY purity style, of course, something we've learned so much more about since that initial moment with, like, Iori and all of them. Of course, I mean, we didn't really know too much about the DIY purity style before we knew about Samura and Uruha and all of that various stuff, right? And then just seeing this whole chapter, and I legitimately had to be like, Dad, I'm sorry, I'll finish my breakfast here in a minute, and I pretty much just walked outside. I was like, oh my gosh, Uruha! Oh, the throat. I was like, oh my gosh, Uruha is back. Let me probably not do any more voices, but that is my quick story. The reason this video may be a bit of a shorter one, because of course I'm trying to get this video out on the day of release, even if it is almost at midnight, and it's currently 9:10 when I'm sitting down. I mean, it's 9:10 this exact second whenever I'm recording it, so it's like, oh boy, like, I don't have too much longer to get this video recorded, all of that. And also, something else that'll, like, radically date this video is the whole idea of, like, hey, today is the end of Books of Millions, buy one, get one 50% off sale, at least, they normally do these, like, a few times a year, and Books of Million is my main retailer I buy manga volumes from, so I went to the, of course, Books of Million today, because I haven't had time to go at least past a few days. I'm like, I want to get the Kagurabachi video done, but I also really want to buy manga for a really cheap price. I mean, today I ended up getting 11 volumes for, like, 77 bucks, and I'll be going through all of those whenever I sit down and do the manga haul video. Yes, I still do manga haul videos on this channel. I know I have not done one since the end of last year, but This year, so far, I've bought 35 manga volumes, and I don't know if I'm going to split that up into, like, hey, we're going to do the January, February, March, April manga haul, and then wait another 4 months, and then wait another few months, but really, there's no point in doing these videos when, like, I have, like, 30 volumes to show off, so I'm trying to, like, build up a little bit of, like, a thing, like, hey, I'm going to talk about, like, 30-something volumes at once, right? But while I was at Books A Million, I don't know, I was just walking around, and this guy was like, oh, hey, you here for a sale too? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And me and this guy ended up just, like, sitting at Books A Million and talking our ass off about all anime, manga, and all of that various stuff for, like, it was close to an hour. It was at least 45 minutes. And of course, my voice is very, like, hoarse and everything from that. I've been drinking plenty of water and all of that, but because of that, my voice is just a little tired. So, of course, whenever the voice there a second ago, like, my throat was not very happy with me about that. But all of that being said, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter one, at least I think. I'm pretty sure I've already rambled, like, well, let me just open up my phone to check real quick. Yeah, I've already rambled close to 6 minutes, so this one may not be a short one. I may have just been lying to you all. But of course, getting into this chapter of Kagurabachi, last time we had all of these various ideas of like, hey, Hakuri's here. We really had just a chapter focused on him and Kudo pretty much going around doing all of these things. Kudo looked like he did some sort of like, hey, I'll pretty much take all of this damage like Hakuri, you keep on running on. We saw Hakuri end up using both his storehouse sorcery and Izzy So sorcery last chapter, and this really cool moment of him like blowing these two guys back. So of course, like, oh, we've got these traitors of the Kabanaki, or not really traitors, but these people who, let me also mute Discord real quick, but these people who have sort of, have hostages taken for him, so, like, they're against the Kabanaki because they don't want their friends and family to die, pretty much, right? And we ended off last chapter with this whole idea of Hakuri being like, hey, I'm one of the core fighters, I need to be able to protect all this various stuff, right? But we open up this chapter with of course, the Sideburns Kabanagi guy, which I never have to call him that again because we now know his name is Izaru. And of course, one of my co-hosts on the Kabanagi Headquarters podcast was nice enough to pretty much send over translations for all of the names this chapter. And of course, I should have had this pulled up beforehand, but he says that, if I can find it, of course, I cannot find it here in this moment. There we go, it took me a second, but pretty much his name means boar monkey. Those are the two sort of kanji that are used in Japanese, and it sort of makes sense with the name of Izaru, right? Of course, being like, hey, some character, I mean, it just makes sense because I know a little bit of Japanese. To anybody else, that probably doesn't make any sense if you're not sort of inundated with a little bit of the culture also, right? But we see that Izaru is walking up to the sort of shack where all of the sensory guys are pretty much. And it's really cool because, like, I expected this to be in sort of, like, this random, like, room in the Kabanagi headquarters. And what it's in is it's sort of in one of these, like, oh gosh, or like it's an octangular hut pretty much. Or it's not even octangular, it's got like a lot more rooms than this. But of course we see the main guy sitting there, his brain almost hooked up to the lantern. Of course he's like floating on that towel above all of the water. And then of course they're in this sort of like circular with like sided building pretty much, right? I don't know what it sort of like reminds me of like a gazebo or something like that, but I'm pretty sure it's not what they're called in like traditional Japanese, all of that various stuff, right? But it's also very interesting, like, hey, we've got almost like this black pool of water around it, right? But Izaru walks up, just says like, hey, what's going on, guys? A worker's body just suddenly exploded, as we just get like a few flashbacks to like, oh my gosh, all of these attacks that happened last time with all of this pine tree sorcery, right? As we see the main sensory guy currently is pretty much sitting in the lantern, just says like, oh, Mr. Izaru, we're currently investigating the cause. And Izaru's like, hey, what about the Shinichi, right? And the guy's like, hey, it's safe for now, right? As Izaru just says like, hey, so the Hishaku were trying to destroy us from within, huh? Well, hopefully that was all of them, right? He's like, hey, anyway, there are 4 things the Kabanagi has to protect, even if it costs us our lives. Number 1, the Force Field's core, which, if I'm not mistaken, is this room right here where Izaru is being this, like, I'm pretty sure this guy is the one who we've seen have the pretty much ability to, like, lower and expand the force field and all that other stuff, right? Izaru then just continues saying, like, hey, the Shinichi, the Sword Master, and we then cut over to Hakuri Sazanami. So presumably, it seems like Hakuri is the other person, or the other thing. It's like, hey, we need to be able to keep on these 4 things want to download pretty much, and it seems like Hakuri may be one of them, right? As we see that Hakuri is running through all the halls of the Kabanagi headquarters, and he's just like, hey, there's no telling who's an enemy, but it's okay. As we just see that he's mumbling to himself like, hey, I'm a core fighter, I'm a core fighter, I'm a core fighter. It's honestly really funny how he's just like reinforcing all of this stuff into his brain pretty much, right? As we see Hakuri's just thinking, okay, the Shinuchi, where is that? I sort of need to go and like get it out of here, like put it in the storehouse or something. As he's running through, he's like, hey, is it this way? And we see that he enters a bigger room in the area, right? And we see that one of these sorcerers, of course I said earlier his name is Kashima, pretty much looks over and says like, oh, hey, you're Hakuri Sazanami, pretty much, right? As this guy just says like, hey, I'm the troop leader who I'm the troop leader who reports directly to Kudo. My name's Kashima, pretty much, right? And he's like, hey, didn't Mr. Kudo go to find you? Like, why is he not with you, pretty much, right? And at this point, Hakuri sort of sees this guy and almost like squares off in front of him as Kashima's like, hey, is everything okay? As, of course, an announcement comes over the loudspeaker pretty much saying, like, hey, attention everyone, approximately 4 minutes ago, pine trees sprouted from the bodies of 4 employees and attacked the general vicinity, pretty much, like, hey, some of you may have even, like, witnessed some of these attacks around here, right? And, of course, we also see there's a bunch of other Kabanagi members in here besides for Kashima, and all these guys are like, whoa, like, was that all that rumbling that was going on right now? Like, whoa, that was weird, all that various stuff, right? And, of course, this call like sort of like takes Kashima off guard, and he sort of like puts 2 and 2 together. He's like, oh, wait a second, don't tell me Kudo did something, as Hakuri just says like, hey, Mr. Kudo protected me. And he doesn't really finish that sentence, as like the whole idea is like, yeah, if Kudo didn't protect him, there's a good chance that he's not with us anymore, right? And Kashima sort of like seems to think about this and like, oh, like, damn, like that was my superior officer almost, right? As we then see the sorcerer, or the sensory guy, just says like, hey, I've investigated all of the corpses. It appears that a Shaku sorcerer planted seeds in all of their bodies, pretty much. And pretty much, like, continues over the loudspeaker thing, like, hey, the seeds activate when the carrier dies. That kind of sorcery couldn't have escaped without their notice. Why would they allow it, pretty much? Like, the Shaku must have blackmailed them somehow, and for some reason, they agreed to become the Shaku suicide bombers, right? And there are more bombs yet to detonate. I've scanned the premises for additional seeds, and I'm picking up close to 50. Wow, that's not very good, especially when Kashima then just says like, hey, and there are about 500 people who work here, so the whole idea is that 1 in 10 are most likely going to explode. It's not a very good thing, but it sort of is what's going on, right? As we then see the sensory guy just says like, hey, I'm zeroing in on all of their exact locations, so everybody spread out and nobody move, except for Hakuri Sazanami. And Kashima just is sort of standing here and is like, oh, wait a second, I see. He works fast, as he pretty much directs all of his men in this room, like, hey guys, spread out if you go all along, right? And he says like, hey, if anyone makes any suspicious moves, I'll break their limbs. He just says like, hey Hakuri, I won't let anybody near you. The Shinuchi is that way. Go. As we sort of see that he just moves out the way and stands completely still, giving Hakuri the chance to run down this hallway pretty much, right? But as all of this happens, and we see Hakuri is like getting ready to move, all of a sudden, we just hear a voice from behind him just go like, hey, Hakuri! As Hakuri's like, oh, wait a second, as he turns around, and he sees that it's Kudo. And Kudo's like, hey, it's too dangerous, I'll come with you, right? And Hakuri's like, oh, hey, Mr. Kudo, you're alive. And Kudo just is like, oh, yes, I got lucky. We see that he doesn't have his mask on or anything. As Kashima says, no, halt. And both Hakuri and Kudo are like, hey, what's all this? As Kudo's like, oh, hey, Kashima, right? As we see that Kashima's like, hey, Mr. Kudo, I'm really glad that you're alright, but you heard the broadcast, didn't you, right? And Kudo's like, yes, I did, but it's too dangerous for him to go alone, like everything is riding on him. As Kashima just says like, yes, precisely, no exceptions. You keep your distance. And we see the Hakuri's like, yeah, but Mr. Kudo, like, risked his life. As we just see that Kashima's like, no exceptions. Hurry on now, Hakuri, right? And as Hakuri sort of, like, gets ready to start to move a little bit, Kudo and Kashima are sort of locked into this back-to-back battle. It's like, no, Kashima, it's me, it's the real me. And Kashima's like, no, I want you to halt either way, right? As, like, tensions are just rising in this room, and we just see all of these sorcerers are looking around at each other like, oh no, what's all of this? And like, as all of this is happening, we look back at the hallway that Kudo came from, and we see this woman in a ponytail running towards him. We see that she has 2 knives in her hands, and we also see that her arms are bandaged up right to below where the elbow is. And we see that attached to these knives is a chain and a stake that has been implanted through this woman's arm, pretty much, right? As we see that Kashima sees this girl pretty much running up here in a moment. He's like, hey guys, get down. And of course, it's too late. We see that this girl goes through and slices off the neck of 2 of these members of the Kabanagi, right? And we see that her target is Hakuri. She goes to sort of leap towards her pretty much, right? And of course, Kashima jumps in the way, takes the blade right through himself, so Hakuri isn't wounded here in the moment, right? And Hakuri goes around and sees this, and he then looks at one of the bodies, and Pine Tree Sorcery starts to sprout out from the top. It goes to attack everything in the vicinity, and of course, it's like, yes, 1 in 10 of the people here are pretty much cursed. They're not really cursed, but, affected by this pine tree thing, so it sort of is what it is, right? And it starts to direct towards Hakuri, but Hakuri ends up getting out of the way by using his Iso to pretty much blow all the pine trees apart, pretty much, right? And as all of this happens, he pretty much, like, falls back against the wall, and whenever he sort of looks up at the battle in front of him, he sees that Kudo is standing there with a knife right next to Kashima's throat, pretty much, right? And we also see this girl is in the background, just, like, holding her blades and everything in her hand, right? As we see Kudo's visage start to disappear and dissipate, pretty much, right? And we see it almost starts to goop off of this guy, really reminding me of Himiko Toga from My Hero Academia. Just the way this, like, sort of transformation power works and how it sort of, like, just, like, goops off the skin. It's honestly a really cool way to do transformation powers, where it's, like, it either, like, goops off the skin, or it's just, like, a hazy effect that sort of, like, blows off you or something like that. I always love when, like, those 2 types of things are represented in media, pretty much, right? But this guy's like, whoops, the time's up, pretty much, right? As we see that it pretty much, like, dissipates, and we see this guy who presumably has yellow hair. That's what my manga knowledge is calling me, right? Of course, like, Hakuri's hair is the whole idea of, like, it is just, like, white in general, but, like, just the way this guy looks, I imagine that he has yellow hair. I at least just want to think so, right? But it's sort of in a bowl cut, and he sort of, like, has a little bit of, like, a round, a more, elongated, like, facial structure, almost, is how I'm going to put it, right? But this guy just says, like, yeah, it was just transformation sorcery. Mr. Kudo died protecting you, right? It's like, dun, 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 dun. This guy just said, the transformation guy says, like, hey, that's the last of Kudo's group. The quota has been met, and the Western Underground sector's main force has been neutralized. Like, hey, go ahead and kill Hakuri Sazanami. And this girl's like, hey, I got it, and goes to pretty much go and attack Hakuri, right? And Hakuri's like, wait, quota, like, what is all of this? And of course, it's also important to note, like, these 2 guys don't seem to have the Hishaku emblem on their hand, so they seem to maybe be hired or something else of the sort here in the moment, right? Of course, sort of like how I saw with the Shigyu brothers, but of course, these 2 people seem, like, very much more, like, proficient in what they're doing, pretty much, right? But we then see that Kashima just says, like, hey, run, Hakuri, don't trust anyone. As we then just cut away from the scene where presumably, yeah, it doesn't really look good for Kashima here in the moment, right? But hey, it may here in a second, right? We cut back over to the sensory shed, as I'm going to call it, I think, as we just see all of the water is, like, spiking up and bubbling up around this, the main guy in the vat, pretty much, right? And we see that one of these people on the outside are just saying, like, hey, the casualties are mounting pretty much, and the main sensor guy just says, like, hey, something strange, it's not just the pine tree victims, right? As we see that, oh no, I've already forgot Izaru. I didn't even need to scroll back all the way. I remembered his name in the moment, right? We see that Izaru just says, like, hey, there are probably 2 types. I'm talking about the enemies here. The first are the ones that have seeds implanted in their bodies. I imagine their families are being held hostage. Izaru, you hit the nail on the head there, pretty much, right? But to get intel on 50 staff members' families, you'd have to work here. And we then see Sensor Guide's like, okay, so what you're saying is, in other words, there's probably a group of traitors around. And we see that Izaru's like, yes, people who leaked information to the Hishaku, if they have a plan to take advantage of all of this chaos, pretty much, right? As we just see one of these guys just like, hey, no, it's over then. Of course, this is one of the, like, backup sensory guys, right? He's like, no, it's over. We have no idea who our enemies are. Like, the enemy knows the exact location of where our key forces are, as well as our locations. Like, there's no way we can stop them. As Izaru just says, like, hey, no, shut up and pull yourself together. Identify anyone not following orders, and tell the troops that as well, pretty much, right? as pretty much we just see it since you guys like, hey, the Pines are jamming all the circuits, like, just one moment, I'll get there, right? As we see that Izaru is like, hey, we'll know who the enemies are momentarily. Actually, when we get through this ambush, it's the perfect opportunity to clear them out. As we also just get over in the corner, Izaru, like, a little bit of a note saying, like, hey, Izaru thinking, like, hey, this dude's fired. I don't know if he's talking about the one on the ground or the other sensory guy or the main guy into that or the backup sensory guy. I'm probably guessing it's a backup sensory guy just because, like, hey, he's not really doing all of his things, but the guy in the vat is doing his best here in the moment, right? But we cut back over to where Hakuri is, and of course these two other sorcerers, and we just see that Hakuri is running away, and Hakuri's like, no, they all died to protect me. Presumably Kashima's dead. That really sucks. I really like Kashima in this chapter, like, giving, like, hey, Hakuri, don't move, and, like, telling his superior, like, don't do all of that. Kashima just had such an awesome chapter, right? But pretty much we just see that Hakuri's running away, and is like, hey, they all died to protect me, like, I can't rely on anyone. I'm all alone. I have to fight. His hand is, like, trembling and shaking. He's just running through. He thinks back to all of Kudo's messages last chapter, like, hey, you've lost a little bit of your absolute abilities for ESO and Storehouse, and Hawker's like, no, my sorcery is limited, and as he's running down the hallway, these other two sorcerers are really ganging up on Hakuri, right? As Hakuri looks up in the hallway, and he sees somebody running towards him, and then his eyes just widen, as we see none other than Uruha running down the hall. Of course, Uruha's in his regular, like, whole cape attire, his hair braided or in a bun behind it, and we just see that he is holding a sword in one hand, and pretty much Kachink's pretty much opening up, as we see that he just runs towards Hakuri, and Hakuri's like, wait, Uruha, as he didn't just realize is the whole idea of, like, hey, don't trust anyone that Kashima just said, right? And he just thinks back to, of course, Senkotsuji Temple, where he saw Samura cut down Uruha. As Hakuri just stops in his tracks, because, like, hey, this Uruha could be the fake one. As pretty much Hakuri just thinks, like, yeah, that's right. Some of them have transformation abilities, like, hey, there's no way of knowing who's who. As we just see Uruha yell out, hey, Hakuri, Centipede! As, of course, this is, as I said earlier in the video, this is the move that, of course, Chihiro used on the train with Kuro, and pretty much it was the whole idea of, like, hey, make Uruha pull him out of the way to duck, which is only something that Hakuri and Uruha from that train would know. As we just see Uruha grab the boy in his hand, hold it in the reverse grip, go to grab it, point his finger out like a gun almost, and just pull out the EI White Purity style. As we just see that Hakuri realizes this, ducks out of the way, of course, is the whole idea of the centipede, and we just see Uruha jump forward and slash and clash blades with these two members, pretty much, right? As Uruha just is like, hey, I'm so sorry it took me so long, Hakuri, and Hakuri's like, wait, no, Mr. Uruha, and he just says, like, hey, I'll explain later. Come with me. And Hakuri just starts crying in a moment, like, okay. This was such a good chapter of Kagurabachi. I know there was a lot of issues this week with people, getting this chapter spoiled to them through ways, and that's not a very good thing, and I am very happy that I wasn't spoiled on this chapter, because like I said, just the whole moment of sitting down at 11, of course, my time, Eastern. If you guys are in different places, of course, the chapters come out for you at a different time. But sitting down for me, eating that meal of breakfast pretty much, and going through, and like I said, whenever I saw Uruha, I dropped my fork, and the whole idea of the centipede getting out of the way, it's a masterclass. Seeing Uruha use this EI White Purity style, this may be one of the best chapters of Kagurabachi ever. I know I probably say that really, really often, and I try not to. I try to be very critical of these series, because of course, while there are so many cool moments of Uruha showing up here in the moment, there of course are some flaws with things, all things considered, right? And of course, like, I often try whenever I talk about a manga series like this to not just be like the guy who's sitting down here hyping it all up, because I want to talk about these series realistically. Of course, that's something that I do in my weekly Shonen Jump read-through videos pretty much, where I talk about all of the series that I read in weekly Shonen Jump, including Kagurabachi and some others. And there's some manga in there where I clearly say, like, hey, I didn't like this chapter. And of course, I wouldn't be covering this manga like Kagurabachi if I didn't think that most of the chapter is going to be worth my time to talk about. But especially this one, I really, really feel bad that I didn't get sort of my thoughts in the moment. Because, of course, if I had the availability this morning, I would have recorded this video at that 11 o'clock time instead of having to go out and tear down a greenhouse like I did today. And I sort of felt like, man, I really should just, like, record a video of my, like, screaming thoughts here in a moment. But I just figured, hey, I'll wait a little while. And either way, just a really awesome moment with Uruha showing up. Really, the only other final thought thing I have is the whole idea of, like, hey, I like getting Izaru's name, and hopefully this is a trend that keeps going forward, seeing all these other people, but out of everybody in the Kabunagi, I've always said that I thought Kudo was the traitor, right? And the whole idea here is like, okay, on one hand, yes, Kudo could be simply dead, but on the other hand, spoilers from Bleach here, I don't think they're heavy spoilers, but I think they're spoilers nonetheless. What if Kudo is just pulling a Sosuke Aizen on us, right? The whole idea of, oh wow, this big virtuous guy and all of this various stuff. They've got a subordinate who trusts them almost implicitly, right, but isn't afraid to tell them no. Granted, Momo doesn't really do that in Bleach, but I guess it sort of is what it is. But of course, this whole thing about death and like, oh no, that's like crazy and terrible, right? Only to pretty much unfurl the bigger idea of like, holy shit, he is the traitor at the end of the day and one of the main villains of the series. I think that would be really, really cool if it was Kudo, but honestly, it's obviously not Izaru, and I really don't think it's the, Ichiki, whose name we learned last time, and being that those are really the only named, members of the Kabunagi, really, I mean, it's not Izami, it's not Izaru, I don't think it's Ichiki, so it sort of has to be one of the R1s we haven't had any focus on yet, and I honestly really want it to be Kudo, because I think a Sosuke Aizen moment would be absolutely amazing. And while I'm talking about Kudo, just quickly, I want to say, Kashima, he was awesome this chapter, not being afraid to pretty much telling Hakuri, like, hey, go, I'll protect you if any of these people start to move. Like, I know you don't trust anybody, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to trust me. Just go fulfill your duty. Kashima legitimately is the GOAT of this chapter. Does Uruha have the cooler moment of coming back at the end? Yes, but at the end of the day, Kashima, I don't know if we're ever going to see him again, right? He very well just could be dead, and it seems like that one guy may have slit his throat there in a moment, but of course, it doesn't seem like any pine tree sorcery came out of him, so it seems like he is a good guy at the end of the day. And also, presumably, these, Hishaku hires pretty much would know who the guys who pretty much traitors are, but like, I don't know. That's all my rambling to do. I probably talked about this video for like 30 minutes or something crazy. Jesus, 27 minutes. At the beginning of the video, I said this was going to be a short one. But yeah, that's really all there is to it. Just a great chapter of Kagurabachi, and one that I really, really loved. Hokazono, you occasionally miss, I'll be completely honest, but I think this was one of my favorite chapters of Kagurabachi to date, and what can I say? I just absolutely loved it, right? I'll see you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma231 signing out. Yeah, thanks Bachi Bros for watching, and boys, Uruha made it back out on the other side. I'm so happy to see it. Alright, I'll catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma231 signing out.